The Utah Utes are going to have a historic season in 2025.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into our show, make sure you like and subscribe. My name is JT Wistrcill, the host of Locked On Utes. Excited to be joined by one of the top football minds in the state of Utah, Bryan Brown, kind enough to come on with me. On today's show, we're diving into all things schedule predictions. We're going game by game, talking about if Utah can come out on top. Bryan, just for quick thoughts on this schedule, I believe this Utah team has a very favorable schedule in terms of how it could have played out. Incredibly tough opponents along the way, but a lot of them you don't get back-to-back. You get buys at a good time, and the fact that they don't have to go back on the road back-to-back weeks, I think is pretty nice. So some tough opponents along the way, but the way it was structured, I do think it's favorable for Utah, and I do think this Utah team is going to have a major bounce back. What are your overall thoughts on this schedule and this Utah team as we enter the season?
I think it is a difficult schedule, if we're being completely honest, in the sense that you don't really have much time off, and that regard it is throughout the course of a schedule, and we can debate the number of conference opponents that each team should play in a different scenario. But for example, the week before that South Carolina has to go to Clemson, they get to play Coastal Carolina, and there's not really any kind of break for the University of Utah. Also strange that the rivalry game lands in the middle. Now, that being said, I think there are checkpoints or benchmarks along the way in this schedule to where if Utah passes through those, I think it unlocks even more potential down the road. And so in that regard, I think it is a favorable schedule in the sense that, like, if you get through the early teeth of it, that gives you a really good opportunity to make a run to the Big 12 championship game.
Well, you mentioned the early teeth of it. That's what we're going to start with. We're going to basically break the schedule down into chunks of 3 and talk about these games in each set. So starting off first with the massive one against UCLA. Obviously, Nico's first game with the Bruins here. I'm going to win for Utah in this game. UCLA's just got a lot of new pieces coming together. The fact that Nico didn't even go through spring ball, I think, is incredibly concerning. Mikey Matthews is on this team, but they just don't have a lot of proven commodities at the pass-catching positions, too. The best thing about this UCLA team last year was the defense. They got to replace a lot of that. I do think Utah goes into a Pasadena and gets a win on their opening night. Love me some Big Sky week 2, Utah's home opener. Cal Poly, 6 p.m. on ESPN+. Cal Poly, actually, I checked the Big Sky standings. They're projected in the coaches poll preseason. They're projected 11th, and this is a Utah team that doesn't lose much at home when they have their projected starting quarterback entering the season actually be that guy. I don't think a loss to Cal Poly is coming here, and I know some people are scared of the Wyoming game. I do get why, but this is a Wyoming team that was 10th in the Mountain West a season ago. They have a quarterback who's not very experienced, a couple of returning starters on the offensive line, a tight end I like, but a defense that wasn't great either. Didn't even score 20 points per game last year. They got a lot of rebuilding to do. They don't have the likes of the resources that Utah does to retool quickly. I'm going to 3-0 start to Utah to begin the season. What do you got, Bryan?
Yeah, I have a hard time disagreeing with you on that one, JT. Understandably so. Utah fans always carry a little bit of trauma with teams like Wyoming because there have been letdown games in the past. And usually those games where you expect to win and you lose are the most memorable and most emotionally impactful. That being said, I do think that UCLA game is going to be a real tell-all for the rest of those games in the sense of how well Utah plays in certain phases of the game, right? I think if the offense comes out and plays well, I think the defense could really set a tone. I'm not exactly sure how good UCLA it really is up front. And with Nico Iamaleava coming in for the very first time and playing in that one, obviously the atmosphere down there is going to be insanely agitated, excited. I would expect that the Rose Bowl will be as full as it gets for a UCLA game. But I think that's the great part about that segment of the schedule. If you can win that one, then it just parlays into a nice home affair against Cal Poly, where you can really tighten up the screws, get your 2 deep, some extra experience, and then you roll into Laramie for a good test game on the road.
One thing, too, a lot of people are talking about, I'm worried about Utah sleeping on Wyoming with Tech the following week ahead. Let's not forget, Devon Dampier did lose to Wyoming last year. It was a 49-45 shootout, but they weren't able to get the win. So I think Jason Beck, they're going to be ready for that game. And I don't expect Utah to have a letdown on the road. And if they do have that letdown on the road, that they're not going to accomplish anything of the lofty expectations that have been placed on this team. Speaking of lofty expectations, my gosh, Texas Tech, the Big 12 paper champions on paper for what this roster has built. Also say just deservedly so. I mean, it's a top 3 transfer portal class they brought in, but it's very hard to win at Utah, as we mentioned. Yes, Utah's had their stumbles at home, but you think about it, when this Utah team has had their guy they've wanted at quarterback to be there, even the loss to Baylor in 23, that was with a backup quarterback. So this is a Utah team that I do think bounces back at home this season, and I do think they're going to beat Tech here, right? Tech is a very good team, but this is their first Big 12 game. This is their first big test as well, I would add too. And it's a new offensive lines coming together. They got some pieces I like, but they got to come together. Also, we're just had their star running back get hurt. Or not star, but their most promising running back. He just got hurt. And they got some pass catchers I like on the outside too. It's a talented defensive line, but Utah's got the offensive line, I feel like, to at least minimize what they can do. Let's also not forget Devon Dampier is a guy who is very difficult to sack. This guy averaged 7.5 yards per carry when he did run and was brought down less than 6 times last season too. So I do think Utah, with that home field advantage, Tech not being fully in sync yet, because I do think Tech is going to be a juggernaut, but I think Utah finds a way to win this one at home, while Tech is still coming together and bringing in all their new transfer pieces and parts. Then Utah's got one more game before the bye. They're going to West Virginia. Look, I understand why people are concerned about this one because it's a cross-country road game. When I did my Big 12 preseason rankings, I actually had West Virginia at the bottom. It's not trying to shade Rich Rod, but there was just so much new here. They don't know who their quarterback is. They have 2 returning starters back on offense. They brought in over 70 players in the transfer portal in total. Couldn't West Virginia be a solid team? Sure, but it's just hard for me to project, and there's just so much unproven, even in guys at the P4 level. I do think this Utah team goes on the road. They get the win there. Then after that, they do have a bye game, but before that, or bye game, and then after that, get Arizona State, 11th ranked team in the country according to the AP poll. This is a loss for me. As much as I was just talking about how good Utah is at home, this is the best. This is another just elite team. They got so much back from last season. Sam Levitt, such a strong signal caller. Udo, the back coming in to replace Scatabo. He did have 1,000 yards rushing last year. A lot of offensive linemen back. Tyson, the receiver, really prominent. One of the best run defenses in the Big 12 last year. Some questions in the pass rush and secondary, but to me, this is one where Levitt is able to overcome some of the just Levitt and have one of those games. And this is, to me, where Utah will suffer their first loss of the season. Brian, how are you feeling about these 3 games?
Worried. I don't think there's any other way to look at it, and I think this is really the benchmark of the schedule for Utah. For my money, it's the hardest 3 games, 3-game set on the schedule. I think Texas Tech is going to put up a significant fight. Now, granted, they lost one of their best players to an ACL injury in the transfer running back, and there are a lot of pieces that they have to put together. It'll be interesting to see. Historically, Joey Maguire teams have struggled a little bit in the early season. They do return a quarterback with a lot of experience in Baron Morton, but they also introduce a brand new offensive coordinator. Now, I have a lot of belief in Mac Leftwich. I think the University of Utah did as well. And unfortunately, he decided to go to Texas Tech. But I think Utah ended up with the right guy in Jason Beck anyways. So all that is to say that stretch is going to determine a lot of the season. If Utah goes through it 3-0, I think it's a point in time that Utah fans can really start looking ahead to the potential of this football team. That being said, I do think the ones that really are going to be difficult are Texas Tech and West Virginia. I think there is, given how the season played out last year and the remainder of the roster, I think there are a lot of players at Utah that still have that Arizona State game circled. I do think it is a rivalry game, has been ever since Utah's joined the Pac-12, and it'll be at Rice-Eccles Stadium in what's most likely a night game. And so I think that Utah probably wins that one, but more than likely loses one of those 2 against Texas Tech and West Virginia.
Yeah, it's hard to go cross-country on the road. Utah beat UCF last year, but Rich Rod's a good coach. I could see that West Virginia team being solid. Drake Toll has them as a I think a top 6 team in the conference this coming season. So we've seen this before, right? Indiana came in, they turned it around right away. So this is where it's just hard to project what some of these teams are going to be in the transfer portal era, because there is so much that's changing and just getting shaken up overall with these rosters, the constant movement that's going to happen. But Utah has a tough stretch to start the season. It gets a little easier in the middle before a few more games on the back end. How's the rest of the regular season playing out for Utah? In our opinion, we're going to give it to you in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Resurgence. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Resurgence Ready. Resurgence Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Resurgence 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes, effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Resurgence might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Resurgence.com/LockedOnCollege, all caps, no spaces, and use the code Locked On College, all caps, no spaces, to get 15% off your order today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege. You can use that promo code Locked On College for 15% off your order today when you use and head over to Resurgence. Bryan Brown back with me here as we continue to break down Utah's schedule. We are on to our next set of 3 games. Utah had the bye, as we mentioned, after West Virginia, which is nice. You come back home and get the bye before going to Arizona. You think it's a win. I had that as a loss. Then, big one, the rivalry rematch, BYU. Those of you who watch the show frequently know I'm down on BYU this year. I was already thinking just the way they won last year. I thought it was going to go the opposite way. Let's not forget we're just 2 years removed from this team missing a bowl game as well. I just think Brockmire winning the quarterback, I have massive concerns about him. The fact that I think it's more of an indictment on the other individuals that they weren't able to claim the job than it is as much as him winning it. There's things about this BYU team I like. I think Bear and the squad will get better as the year goes on. It's going to be a good game, but it's one that I do think Utah wins. So I'm giving Utah a win and a bounce back win in the rivalry here. Then Utah's going to host Colorado at home. There's some things to like about the Buffs, right? Caden Salters, I think, is going to be solid for them at quarterback. If it's not, then we'll see. Lewis, the 5-star, might win that job as well. Maybe the best offensive line that Deion's had there yet, although I don't know how much that's saying. They still have not had a great defense, though, and I just don't see this team being able to get it. If you're going to win in Rice-Eccles Stadium, you need elite quarterback play. I like Salters, like I said. I don't think he's good enough to get the dub here. And I'll say the same thing about Cincinnati the following week. I like what they have under center. They got some defensive linemen and offensive linemen I like, but overall, top to bottom, this team is not going to be able to hang with Utah football, in my opinion. I have them towards the bottom of the Big 12, even though I respect what Scott Satterfield is trying to do with Cincinnati, but I think Utah's just got too many guys here. I think the run game wears them down. And Brian, I have Utah going 3-0 in what I think is a very, like, if you want to accomplish the goals that Utah has, you can maybe drop one of these games, but I feel like Utah should go 3-0 in this stretch.
I do too, and I don't think the results of the games previous really have an effect one way or another here. You're either going to have 3 games that you have to win to get back into it if you lose 2 of those games like I mentioned, or you're going to have to win these 3 games to maintain whatever standing or advantage you have moving forward. And to your point about BYU, it's going to be a battle. That is how it is every single year. And I understand the trepidation with a true freshman starting quarterback in Bear Bachmeier, but everything I've heard about it, and I'm not talking about things floating on Twitter, but from people I trust and sources that I genuinely believe, he is really good. And freshman quarterback can always take their licks, and the season will evolve. And I guarantee you that Morgan Scalley is going to do everything he can to make Bear Bachmeier's life miserable for that week. But I do think that Utah has a lot to play for in that game. And as much as they fought and strove to win the game last year, I think it's going to be even deeper this year. So I do see them winning that one. And then you talked about Colorado. It's great that they have quarterbacks. Who do they have to throw the ball to? Because they have 4 wide receivers from last year's squad currently on NFL rosters. I do think it was under an underrated deep receiving core, and that's even if you took away Travis Hunter. So Colorado, I think they're going to struggle a lot more offensively. That defensive line is going to be intense, so it's going to be a great matchup in that regard. I love Utah's offensive line against Colorado's defensive line in terms of styles makes fights, as people like to say. But also in that regard, I don't see Colorado having the horses to compete with the Utah team, and Cincinnati. New teams that you play always pose a threat.
Sure.
But it's a home game, back-to-back home games at Rice Eccles, back-to-back weeks. I just think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a tough affair.
I agree. You mentioned the offensive line. You do such a great job breaking down the game of football. I want to know: is this the best offensive line in college football up on the hill? The one they got, is this the best in the country?
Not right now. I just don't. I don't know. It's interesting. We talk about the guys up front, and I think there are some really talented players. But at the end of the day, recruiting and stars matter to a degree because it indicates talent and pedigree, and especially with offensive line, it's very rare that they flame out. And Utah has some really quality guys on this starting offensive line. Caleb Lomu still lacks a lot of starting experience, even though I do think he ends up going to the NFL. Same with Spencer Fano. The depth, I think, is a little questionable. We talk about Michael Mokofisi. He has more experience than anybody else on the offensive line, and yet we don't see or hear a whole lot about him in terms of scouts or prognosticators or grading in PFF, which tells me that he still has a way to go. And Jaron Kump, I think you and I have talked about this a lot. He's a tremendous athlete. He's a guy who has not really had a home for a long time in terms of position at the University of Utah. And there's still some improvement that I want to see from him. But that being said, the physical gifts are there. The leadership is there. The work ethic is there. I think Utah truly believes in him. I think he had a much better year last year than maybe I expected him to have. And so the potential to be one of the best offensive line or the best offensive line in football is definitely there.
I've voiced my
right now.
What'd you say?
I just don't think they're there right now.
And I agree. I think they're a top 10 unit in the country. They could very well be a top 5 unit in the country and maybe even the best. I just need to see improvements from some of the interior guys in particular. For me to anoint them there, I think it's the best offensive line in the Big 12 clearly to me. But yeah, I agree. I like what you mentioned about the stars too with some of those guys. Like this is where it's always hard to project how guys are going to perform and what they're going to end up being. So, I wouldn't have guessed last year Spencer Fano would become the best offensive tackle in some people's opinion in college football. Like that's just an incredible compliment to him and shows you how much of a leap and improvement that these guys can make coming up. So really hoping for a massive year from these guys. And Utah's got quite the close to the season, Brian, as we get to our final few games. I have Utah at 8-1 up to this point, and you get your last bye game is to Cincinnati, and then you roll in with you go to Waco, arguably this team's toughest game in my opinion. I'm high on Baylor. Then you go to Kansas State at home, but that's a really good Wildcats team. A lot of people think they're going to win the Big 12 this year. Then you go at Kansas to end the season too. That is a brutal stretch. I think Baylor's going to have a scary good offense this season. Sawyer Robertson, you get a ton of starters back returning. You still got a really nice running back there too. Offensive line improving. Utah's had their number, but I actually think Baylor gets the win in Waco in this one. It's hard to win on the road, especially against really good teams. I think Baylor's going to be a really good team this year, and I think Utah falls in a nail biter in this one, a high-scoring bout as Sawyer makes a couple incredible throws. After that, Utah takes on Kansas State at home. To me, then you got 2 losses in Big 12 play, 1 more, and you're out of the race. And Utah against Chris Kleinman, Avery Johnson. It's going to be a tough and gritty game. But I still have some questions about Kansas State's pass rush. I think Utah gives Devon Dampier enough time, and I think this Utah defense is able to force Avery Johnson into a couple mistakes that help them get a monster home win on the season. I actually think the winner of this game has a great shot to go to the Big 12 title game. Loser probably has any CFP dreams out the window. And if Utah has CFP dreams, it's going to come down to that final game against Kansas. They go on the road. It's at noon. It'll be Black Friday, November 28th. We know what Jalen Daniels can do. Lance Leipold's a really good coach. They got the new stadium and everything opened up. To me, this is where it comes together. We see the best performance we see from this Utah team on the season. They're clicking, they're humming on all cylinders. I think Devon Dampier, the offense is moving. The defense does their thing. I think Utah gets a gritty win. I have Utah at 10-2, and based on some tiebreakers, I have them in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. You always have an eye for the positive side of the University of Utah, as do I. I don't think it does me any favors to pick against the Utes for the most part. And realistically, you have to be comfortable with being wrong if you make prognostications and predictions. I do think that Baylor game poses a lot of I don't want to say issues, but a lot of opportunity for maybe the Baylor Bears to get a victory. Kansas State, I think that's a home game in November. I just feel like we used to have a phrase when I played at Snow College: our best against their best, we win going away. And I do feel like the very same rule applies with the University of Utah. I think University of Utah has a more talented football team across the board than Kansas State. And while Kansas State may have a more tantalizing prospect at the quarterback position in terms of measurables, we still have to see if he's a legitimate quarterback. And I do not necessarily feel the same way about Devon Dampier, if that makes sense. I think he is a quarterback to the core and not just an athlete playing quarterback.
I totally agree. I mean, just Brian, you've watched of Dampier. I know, like it's hard not to be drawn to his skill set and think that he's going to be a game changer for the Utah football program. To watch what he has, the ability, and just not get excited. And it's that excitement that in a lot of ways has led me to picking Utah to make the Big 12 title game. But who are they playing? Do I think they can win it and possibly make the college football playoff? We'll be talking about that in one moment. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends at Open Phone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communication. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep the business and personal calls separate? Open Phone can solve that instantly. And the AI agent helps handle after-hours calls and answer common questions and capture leads so you never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's OPENPHONE.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing number for free. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers with Open Phone. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got an eye on a big-name quarterback or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. There's also a new thing they have on there called max discounts. For this weekend, Prize Picks is offering major max discounts. Do you think Avery Johnson his max discount Saturday, August 23rd at 9 a.m. versus ISU, 0.5 passing yards? How about a max discount number 2? Dak Prescott max discount on Thursday, September 4th at 5:20 versus Philly, 0.5 passing yards. Just a few they got, and you can also just pick higher or lower what you think some of the top guys in the NFL are going to do coming up on any given week. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, to get $50 off today in your lineup after you play your first $5. Prize Picks, you can run your game today. I have Utah in the Big 12 title game. Brian, you said, if you make predictions, you can't be afraid to be wrong. I was wrong last year. Didn't learn my lesson. I'm picking Utah to get right back there. Are you picking Utah to get to the Big 12 title game? You didn't give a final record prediction. Do you want to do it, or you want to just say if they're going to make it there? What you feeling?
I think we talked a little bit in the pre-show discussion that I'm really confused on this Utah football team. I don't know. A lot of the things point to me thinking that they're going, like, if they've really fixed the problem, this was a team that could have had as good a chance, opportunity of getting to the Big 12 championship game as anybody. And so that part of me thinks 10-2. The part of me that has watched this program for the last 3, 4, 5 years and seen some of the things that have happened has me just a little bit skeptical. But at my core, I am a positive person. I'm a believer. I'm hopeful and optimistic. And so I think that's where I'm landing, is 10-2 and a trip to the Big 12 championship game. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'd rather be on the side of cheering this program on. And let me amend that. I believe in this program. I believe in what the coaching staff has tried to do. I believe in the things that have been passed along to me. Just, and I'm not in this game as a reporter or as a media member. We do this as a fun way, for you and I to stay connected, but also because I believe that I have something to say that people want to hear. For the people who don't want to hear it, you have other options out there. Good luck. But at the same time, I feel like this team, the energy around it, the the energy around the coaching staff is just different this year. And I think that, as we walk through the schedule, like there's a lot of bumps that could happen on the road. But realistically, is there any team out there that's talent-wise better than Utah?
Maybe Tech, who I have them seeing in the Big 12 title game.
Maybe. Right? Or maybe Baylor. And so if you're going to bank your assessment on maybes, I think that's a scary proposition. And not only that, but this is Kyle Whittingham that we're talking about. He may be the greatest coach in Utah football history. He may be the greatest coach in the history of the state. I don't know. I'll let everybody else decide that one. I like watching the conversations a lot more than getting in the middle of it these days. But that being said, I think that man with something to prove, with a chip on his shoulder, armed with the knowledge of how things went last year and a desire to want to finish things on the right note, is going to press all the right buttons to get this team where it needs to go.
And I think they will end on the right note. I think this Tech team is a monster or two. I have them seeing in the Big 12 title game. I think Utah finds a way to get it done. I think Devon Dampier makes some incredible plays. I've said before, I think he's going to end the year as a top 10 Heisman finalist. I do not think he's going to win the award. I don't even think he's going to New York, but I just think he's going to have an amazing year. I think he's got a really good shot to rush for 1,000 again, throw for over 3,000 yards too in this Utah offense. And I think the results are going to be a dynamic QB, great offensive line with a strong defense. I think it's a Big 12 title. I have Utah getting into the college football playoff after winning the Big 12, but they do have those 2 losses, so probably going to be a 10th seed, which unfortunately means, because they reseed it now, the highest 4 conference champions don't automatically get that bye like last year, which is unfortunate for Utah. But I think they have to go on the road in the first round of the playoff. They're going to run into a good SEC and Big Ten team, and I'd give them a better shot if they were on a neutral field. I think it's tough to go on the road. I'll have Utah losing in the first round of the playoffs. So Big 12 champs at 10-2 with a first-round college football playoff loss are my predictions. Bryan, who's Utah meeting in the conference championship game, since you said you had them getting there as well, my friend? And do they win it and go to their first ever CFP?
Yeah, my thought is it's going to be the Baylor Bears, and I think it's going to be a rematch game. And actually, if I were to pick it out, I would think that they lose to West Virginia and Baylor during the course of the season, maybe Texas Tech, although I just have a hard time seeing Utah losing home games. It's just their record is just so strong. And again, we talk about the belief and the hope and all the energy around this team. The conversation does seem very not overly positive in terms of like, yeah, we're going to win it all. We're going to run the table, everything like that. But in the belief in the building, in one another, and a lot of the things that make a team and a culture strong. And so I do think that they get a little retribution in that game against the Bears. I am torn on what happens in the playoff. And realistically, it's because I don't know who they're going to be playing or what those teams look like. Because at this point in time, it is so hard to predict how the other 60-some-odd teams will do during the season. To me, that gives Utah a window to win a playoff game, though, because this is a team and a program that we've talked about just even recently has a pedigree, has a culture around it, and I think a team that goes through the course of a season and has, if it goes the way that we just talked about, I think that's a team that has confidence. I think that's the team that has proven that all the work that they put in is worthwhile, and I think it's a team that will be motivated and driven to finish the season in a way that we haven't seen in the last few years, and so I think they do win a playoff game.
Got me fired up talking about it, man. I'm so excited. We only have one more week to wait to get to it. Bryan, always so great talking ball with you, man. We're not going to get a chance to talk with you until the first game has been played at UCLA. So any final predictions, anything, do you think it's going to happen crazy? A player you're excited to watch?
I mean, the list is long and extensive. You know, I mostly I'm looking forward to seeing what this wide receiver group looks like, how this offensive line performs with a different scheme, and obviously Devon Dampier. I think I always can finish that one off. I'm an offensive guy at heart. I'm pretty confident in what that Utah defense can do. So that's really where I'm excited to see things unfold.
It all gets underway in just barely over a week. In the meantime, we'll keep you rolling with content on Locked On Utes, getting you ready for kickoff in Pasadena. Bryan, always great having you on. Thank you so much for joining me, brother.
Thank you for letting me be here, JT. I always enjoy it.
Always a blast. Thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking about some of the players that we think could have a big year this year for Utah football.